My name is Lado Ladoka. I work for Democracy Maine, and I will be presenting the training today. And this is our fifth and the last training of the season. So you guys made it through all the other trainings. And now, here we are on session 5, Advocacy 201. So hopefully you still remember some of the things that you learned on the other training, session 1 through 4, but I will give some. This one is going to encompass some of the things that you already learned, and then learn few more so that you will be the best advocate that you can be. So I'm going to start by throwing out a definition that you probably know, but it will not hurt to refresh your mind. So policy advocacy is a process of negotiating and mediating a dialogue through which different stakeholders realize their interest and take ownership of your idea and proposal and make it their own. So the idea might have originated from you, but I don't think you actually wanted to own the idea. The people that you're trying to convince are the people that you want to own the idea so that you achieve the goal that you set for yourself. So I'm going to start by asking, what is the issue and why is it important to you? So if you decided that you're going to be working in this field, whether it's through volunteering or actually doing the work as being paid, there is a reason that brought you to the field. And then you have to identify what the issue is that you are passionate about and wanted to make sure that you will spend a lot of your resources, whether it's time, money, or whatever that is, on that specific issue. For the sake of this training, the example that I'm going to be using is the voting rights. And this is the league, and the league is founded basically to advocate for women to be able to vote. And that was 100 years ago, and they're still going strong. And so if you believe that our democracy depends on the participation of its citizens, so then you would also think that you wanted to make voting much easier for the citizens to be able to participate in it. And as we have seen this last election in November, because of COVID-19, different states were able to experiment with the different voting rules, and the voter participation went up more than we have ever experienced in our lifetime. So if you advocate for voting rights or you wanted to make voting easier, then one of the things that you can think of is removing the voter ID requirement on the day of the voting. People who are going to go and register to vote will still be required to present their ID to prove their identity. But as soon as you are on file, you are already registered, there's no reason that you should be carrying that ID around, especially on the voting day. So that should not be a requirement. Absentee ballots should be mailed to all the registered voters. Automatic voter registration, online voter registration, improving civic education in school. All these things have shown to increase voter participation. Now that you have selected the issue that is important to you, you have to decide who has the power to help you change what needs changing. Because the topic that I selected is a voting right, more likely that is going to be at the state level. But whether it's the city or the school board or the bureaucrat themselves, all these people are capable of bringing changes that is meaningful. And depending on the issue that you're advocating on, you might have to lobby people based on what positions they are in. And so I put this down here so that you will be able to know advocacy or lobbying is not only at the state level, but it happens at different stages. And one of the beautiful things is that we are all advocates. Whether you do this work for a living or you never have called your legislator before, one thing that I guarantee for sure that everybody is capable of, we know how to communicate, we know how to negotiate, and we know how to advocate for ourselves, because those skills is what we use on a daily living to be able to get what we need in life. And so those skills, you already possess them, but advocating for a policy require now a different maturity so that you will be able to get into the people that you wouldn't be able to get to using a normal skill set that you have in life. So you decided on the issue, you identify who has the power. Now, what is going to be your role? How are you going to play? What role are you going to play to be able to bring the change that you desire? Now, depending on the time that you have or on your skill set, you might become an advocate or a lobbyist, a volunteer, an organizer, or the issue is so important that you don't think you will be able to achieve it unless you run for the office yourself and you become a policymaker. Those are all the options that you have on your hands. For people, if you are not muted, please mute yourself so that everybody will be able to follow the training and be able to listen in. So what resources are you going to be able to bring to bear to affect the change? So the resources can be your time, can be your skill set, can be your network, can be money that you will donate. But all the things that you bring to bear is going to make a difference in terms of how much you will be able to achieve. And that is not to say unless you have this skill set, then you are valuable. No. If you're doing it on your own, more likely you need some skill set to be able to advance the cause of your life. But if you're joining an organization like the League of Women Voters, you will gain that training through working, and you will be able to gain all the skill set that you need to be able to advocate for the issue that you wanted to advocate. So the issue that you are passionate about, the voting right, and you've been working on that bill, mailing voter registration to every registered voter in Maine, it did not pass. So what are you going to do now? Well, the first thing that you need to do is to be able to identify exactly how much progress were you able to make. So, for example, the bill was introduced in the legislature. You identify your representative in your district. You were able to convince your representative that every voter should receive their ballot through the mail. That bill was introduced and it received a hearing in the committee. Now, did that bill got voted out of the committee or it died right there? If it was voted out of the committee, then it go to the floor. Did it pass when it got to the House floor? If it did, then on the Senate side of the House, how far was the bill able to go? If you are able to understand the process in terms of the bill was able to pass in the committee, it passed the House, so it died in the Senate, then you will be able to know that, okay, your representative did the work and it was able to move the goalposts further. But now it requires more than what he's able to do to be able to get it further because it died in the Senate. So then you need to be able to say that, okay, how can you stay on the top of it? How can you be persistent and not give up? Because this time it did not pass. You have to come back again, mobilize the resources to be able to keep working on it until you're able to achieve the goal, that is to make it pass. How do you do that? Well, you might need to be able to attend district meetings to be able to know exactly the people who voted against your bill, what are their interests, and what was the objections that were raised, so that those objections will be able to get addressed, whether it's through an amendment or through reworking the bill to make sure that the next time around is able to pass. How do you able to work with the staff of the legislator so that you will be able to gain some insight? Because the legislators themselves at the state level, each legislator do not have a staff. They do most of the work by themselves. But the chamber or the caucus has a staff. And those staff are valuable in terms of the skill set and the things that you will be able to gain from them to be able to move the issue forward. So building these relationships are going to be important in ensuring that you are able to succeed. So you are on the mission. You need to know your staff, meaning the issue that you're going to be speaking on, you need to know inside and out. What committee does your legislator sits on? It's your legislator in the leadership role. Because if they are on the leadership role, they have power. They will be able to advance the bill and make it sure that it moves through the process faster compared to if it's just one of the members and he does not have the power to be able to bring it up for a hearing. So the leadership position is important, but even if that legislator is not in the leadership position, then they will be able to work the system to ensure that the bill is heard, and then it has the help, it has the support that is needed to be able to move along the process. But you also have to ask yourself, what is it that you are actually asking your legislator to do? So what is the ask? Are you asking the legislator to sponsor a bill, or you're asking them just to vote on a bill that you believe in? So that ask has to be clear. And at the end of the day, you might realize that you yourself has to become an organizer. An organizer is the person that talks to a lot of people every single day because they believe in something that they wanted to achieve, whatever that is. And you can do it for a job, or you can do it as a volunteer because you believe that whatever it is, in this case, mailing ballots to every single voter is very important, that you will spend that much time and resources to ensure that that is the law of the state. All these things you have done, and still more is asked of you. So now you need a collaboration and partnership, because at the end of the day, as far as you are concerned, when that bill is passed and become the law in the state, then you are satisfied. But if that is not accomplished, then the mission is not completed. So now you're building power. You are trying to get more people involved in the idea or in the bill that you wanted to get done, so that it will move further along. Because working as an individual or one organization is not enough to move the needle. You're going to need more legislators to be involved in it to make sure that it bring the majority that is needed to make it pass. Holding meetings at your library, meeting with the organizations and business leaders, and the business leaders, well, each constituency has its own power, where business people have legislators that support businesses. Nonprofits have legislators that support nonprofits. So if you mobilize all these resources, more likely you will be able to achieve the results that you so desire. So talking to different people, talking different organizations, bringing all this into bear might be able to move the bill further along. And you might even start raising funds to different legislators, because when you're able to support them, then they will be able to support your cause, whatever that is that you believe in. And so this is how you were able to build power and make sure that the bill that you wanted to move it to become a law is accomplished. I'm going to bring my friend, Professor Graham, to be able to tell us an example of a process that he went through to be able to pass a bill in the Maine state legislature, and working with a Congressman Golden when he was still a representative at the State House. And Professor Graham, you are more than welcome.
Okay, hello everybody. I am Matt Graham, and Lotto is correct. I teach at the University of Maine, the Maine Business School. My area specifically is information systems. I teach design and development of information systems. But that is not pertinent to the conversation that we're having tonight. What my wife and I and my family experienced is difficult to talk about. It's actually quite tragic. In 2017, my daughter, Ani Graham, passed away. She died by suicide, and she was 13 years old. So that's a big pill to swallow, I know. So as you can imagine, it's difficult for me to talk about. But I think what Lotto is doing is important, and I'm happy to support this effort. So he asked me to come in and share my personal experience with drafting a bill and having it go through the process of becoming a law. You guys likely know the steps that a bill goes through to become a law better than I do, admittedly. So I'm just going to say what Lotto asked me to say, and that was just to really share my personal experience as a citizen, of the state of Maine, a non-politician, a non-political actor, in that process. So I'll do my best to kind of convey that information to you. So to start, just a little bit of background. When my daughter turned, well, let's say when my daughter entered the 6th grade, we sent her to a new school. And it was a part of a move. We moved basically from Auburn to Lewiston, and she went to a new school. The change was difficult for her. She didn't like the move. So we put her in counseling, and we thought that that would help. And Ani was in counseling for the better part of her 6th grade year, into the following summer. We listened to our counselor, and we were hopeful that things were progressing and that Ani was, venting her feelings and working things out and hopefully getting better. But she didn't. she didn't adapt. She started cutting herself, mostly in places that we would never, ever see. But there's also another part to that, right? In addition to dealing with her depression and some additional diagnoses that we believe existed after, that we learned about after her passing, when she wasn't in that space, she was the most wonderful little girl you'd ever imagine. Happy, full of life, many, many friends. For example, we said you can have a birthday party one year, and we said you can invite 10 friends, and I believe 35 people showed up, So my daughter, it was hot or cold. She was either very, very happy, or she was very, very, very depressed. And it was just really hard to figure her out. So that was right. The story about the bill came obviously after she took her life. A friend of mine at the university knew Representative Golden at the time. He had spoken at an event. She reached out to him and said, Matt just and his family just went through this, the passing of their daughter, and we wanted to know if there was something that they could help. The area that we wanted help in is while Ani was still with us, we went to the school counselors several times and said, we need help. We don't know what to do. She's saying she wants to die. How do we respond to this? What are we supposed to do? And the school counselor, I think, was a wonderful person. I think she was great. I just don't think she was fully equipped or trained on how to respond to this threat of suicide ideation. And so we got a lot of, don't worry, she's just a teenage girl. Teenage girls say these things happen. So it was difficult. And we were actually getting the same information back from our counselor. She's a teenage girl. Teenage girls say these things, blah, 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 blah. And so we had periods of time where we were like, okay, so she's just an emotional teenage girl. Something's going to happen, whatever. But nonetheless, Ani did write a note one day in class. And the note that and I can't even say it was a note, I apologize. It was an assignment. She was asked to write a short story. The short story that she wrote said, 2 girls go to bed, only one of them wake up. And the teacher at the time, who was a sub, interestingly enough, for that day, thought to herself, this is not good. I don't know what it is, but this is not good. I'm going to send her to the office, see if we can get the parents involved, see what's going on. We got a call from the school, come pick up your daughter. We came and picked up the daughter, and we said, what's going on? And said, well, this is what she did. We read the assignment, and we went, oh my God, this is terrible. What do we do? And the school said, we don't do anything with that. We're not going to do anything. Our response is to send her home to the parents. And we went, okay. My wife was smart. She's a nurse, and she was smart. And so she took my daughter to her provider. He was a physician assistant with pediatric associates who had been treating her also for her depression with medication. So my wife took Ani to that physician assistant and said, look, here's this note. This is what my daughter wrote. What do I do? And unfortunately, the physician assistant said, I don't think this is anything. And again, we got the story. She's a teenage girl. Teenage girls say these things. And he sent her home. He said, there's nothing here to worry about. Ani, fascinatingly enough, that day came home and she was depressed for a little while. But then she came out. Like I went in and I talked to her in her room. What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. You want to talk to your Nana? What the heck? She threw me out. She did come out though eventually, and she did something amazing that I would never ever expect. She did her chores. She cleaned the dishes, and she never does that. She did her dishes, and she said a few things to me about life and what's upsetting her and different things. And then she went to her room and went to bed, and that would have been the last time I saw her.
You guys probably don't take trachs or you don't take respirators, right? No.
I saw her alive. So it was a bad day. The way this, I'm trying to give you the background. This is tough, you know, I'm sorry. But you got to know what kind of got us here. So, yeah, thank you. So going back, this whole thing happened. My wife and I were confused. We thought, you know, there should have been something. There should have been something where at least the school had a protocol or someone had a protocol that said, forget just going home. Go to the emergency room. You know, do something. Call in 911. Call in the National Guard. I don't know, you know, but do something. This is serious. So we thought that was important. And as we started to ask questions and look around and dig, we learned that the schools have protocols for everything. They have protocols for suspected physical assault. There are protocols for suspected sexual assault. There are protocols for potential concussion and a sports injury. But there were no protocols for how to respond to a child who says, I want to die, you know? So we said, to us, we thought that was important. We said, there should be something so that parents who are not psychologists or social workers have some guidance and some direction. Again, remember, I was lucky. My wife's a nurse, and at least she knew or thought well to bring her to her healthcare provider. But the healthcare provider, you know, there was a gap there too. Long and the short of it, we said after my colleague introduced me to Jared Golden, they said, well, draft up a bill, draft up what you would like, how you would like the school to respond. And I said, okay. And I wrote something up. Fortunately, I'm at the university, and so I was able to meet with a professor there, another professor there who is a clinical psychologist who specialized, interestingly enough, in teen and adolescent suicide ideation. And I just worked with her briefly. You know, we had lunch and we talked about it. And I talked about the language of what I'm trying to write up. And she said, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can do this. You know, there was all this stuff that we needed to meet. And so we drafted up this little bill. The bill became official. It became LD 1694, and it was titled, I have it here, the resolve directing the Department of Education to adopt protocols designed to prevent youth suicide. I was working with Jared Golden's assistant at the time, and he said, I think it was, you know, we started this process in August, I guess it was, of 2018. And he said, okay, we got your bill. We're going to send it up. There's a whole bunch of other bills. He goes, and so we will let you know if it gets passed, you know, to the next step. I said, okay, whatever. So, you know, kind of what's going on here? What is this thing? And he said, well, we get a lot of bill proposals a year. And we only have these certain windows to present these bills to the legislature and let them decide which ones they want to move forward for consideration of law. And I said, okay, that's great. I said, okay, no problem. I said, well, what's going on? What are my odds? They said, and this was back in 2018, and I was an emotional wreck, as you can imagine. And so I might be a little foggy, but the way I heard it was, he said, they push forward about 10 bills a year, and you are one of amongst, maybe 100 potential bills. And so immediately I realized the odds of my bill going forward were very, very small. And I just said, what the hell? They said, if it doesn't get through, we have an opportunity to appeal, and we might be able to do that, but this is just obviously going to delay the process. There was a snowstorm, and no, sorry, there wasn't a snowstorm. There was something that happened where electricity went out. But nonetheless, at the end of, it probably was the end of September, beginning of October, it's still foggy, but I got an email, said, you're not gonna believe this, but they pushed your bill forward. Your bill's gonna be advanced. I said, okay. So what happened then is they had to assign it to a committee, I guess. And I got assigned to the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. Long story short, this was a contentious ask, because evidently there were already a law in place for teachers to have training about suicide awareness. But there was nothing in place that said, once you're aware that there's a child that's at risk for suicide, what do you do? And so the initial arguments in that first committee hearing was, there's a bill that already exists. We don't need this. This is redundant. I argued that it wasn't redundant. You don't get a lot of time to speak. You got to kind of get to present your case. To give you an example of how difficult this can be, my wife, Rosie, wanted to bring in a picture of Ani so that they knew that this was a real human and that this is happening to real young kids. And they said, no, you can't do that, because we can't bias the committee's opinion in any way. And Ani, terribly cute, terribly pretty, she probably would have biased it. They decided at the time not to just reject us wholeheartedly. And just to let you know, other people can speak at these hearings, and there are stakeholders that come in and they will say they're for. There are stakeholders that will come in and say they're against. And there are stakeholders that will come in and say that they're neither for or against. And truthfully, they are the most troublesome. Like those that are against, you know what you're up against, you know what you're dealing with. But those that say we're neither for or against, but then they say these are all the reasons why the bill wouldn't work. That was tough. That was tough to get through. We had to go through, I believe in total, 3 of these committee hearings. And the Department of Education got up and spoke and basically said, teachers have too much on their plate already. They have too many required trainings already. We do not want to burden them with anything more. I said, we're not asking you to provide additional training. We're just asking you to close this gap. You have a law in place already that says you have to be aware of suicide ideation or the risk of suicide. You have to be aware of what to look for the symptoms of in your students. But you should, if you identify a student, you should have to do something beyond just sending the kid home. So we went through 3 of these committees. Everyone had an argument. Everyone had a reason why they wouldn't do it. Eventually, it got through the legislature, where the legislature both sides, I guess, voted unanimously to support it. They wanted to approve the bill to become a law. The governor at the time chose simply not to sign the bill, not to turn it into a law. But the good thing is the deadline for him to sign or reject or whatever that process is came and went. And so as on the night that it expired, because he didn't do anything, it automatically became a law. So I want to say, let me see here. I have the deadline, I have the schedule of events with me. In April 11th of 2019, it was finally passed into law. So it became LD 97 at that point. I guess the procedural process, you guys know is probably better than me again. But the in between each of these committee meetings or hearings or whatever they were, I had to provide support, for people wanting to see this become a law. So I just on Facebook, I just reached out to friends each time and family each time and said, hey, you're not going to believe this. Our bill is going to be considered. Would you guys write letters of support saying that you guys want this bill to be considered as well as law? And people, friends and family. This is damn hard. Friends and family got behind me and did that. And each committee hearing required, a little bit more. And so he did a little bit more. So in the end, and if you look up the law, you'll see the documentation, like they attach it all to it. In the end, we had a lot of support. And so at the end of the day, my wife and I, my family, we did something that we honestly never dreamed of ever having to participate in. But I'm glad we did. Up till last year, I served on the board of directors of NAMI, Maine. And one of the stories that they share is evidently there was a little boy that had suicide ideation. And because their school put a protocol in place, they responded to his suicide ideation and they stopped him. That boy, as the story goes, later reported that he was planning. He was planning on taking his life. So, I don't know. I'm grateful that the law passed, and I will stop there because you don't want to see me become a weeping emotional mess. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for sharing this story. And I will open up for questions. And if you guys have questions, either on the presentation I did or on what Matt shared with everybody.
And so yeah, so they're doing this community household thing or whatever.
I think a friend of mine said to me, one, when you start walking down this road, there's a reason, right? It's not a hobby. It's not a little thing. There's a commitment. There's a reason why you're invested and pursuing public policy and laws. So that was one thing that a friend told me. So I had that motivation. The other thing that I think is probably more important is that there was an injustice, you know, and I don't think it's intentional by any one group or any one stakeholder. I think the schools and the Department of Education took important steps in saying you have to be trained on suicide awareness and suicide ideation. I think they took those important steps. The gap was, what do you do afterwards when someone's identified? And so we not only had an emotional and an important reason to pursue this law, but there was also a gap that needed to be filled. And so my hope is that that's what we were able to achieve. I'll be quiet now, I promise.
Thank you, Matt. And that example is basically the story of Matt, is to allow us to see that this process of making public policy has different components into it, but at the same time, you don't have to be doing it for a living to actually make an impact on public policy. Any person will be able to go through that process and be able to make a law. And there's a question here that is asking, where can you find help to draft a bill? Well, if you are working as an individual, the best option for you is your legislator. Your representative is the person that will be able to help you draft that, because they will take your ideas and submit it to an office at the State House that will draft the bill. And then that will be able to get through the process to become a bill. If you work with the organization that like the League write its own bills. And so they will write their own bills and then submit it in. And then if there's an amendment that is needed, then that amendment will happen at the floor. But those are the process that I know. We have 10 minutes. Yes, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, Matt, I'm so sorry for your loss. That's a really tragic story, and I'm so sorry. It was painful I'm sure, for you to share it. On the process part of the bill, moving the bill, is there any lessons you learned in the process? I understand you were learning as you went along, but in reflecting back, that you would share with us that would help us who may be doing it for the first time, missteps or things that could have been done differently?
Sure. The first thing I would say is do your research. The committees will be looking at the law books and looking for redundancy, and they'll be looking for reasons why this shouldn't become a law. And that's why it was important to identify the gap and make a clear case, an argument for that the gap exists. So to answer your question, do your research. You have to understand what laws already exist to address what you're pursuing, and then how does your potential bill or law, I should say, how does it either improve existing law, fill a gap of existing law, or perhaps it is the law that needs to be in place, right? But you do have to do your research, and doing your research means working with your representative or congressperson, and you will work with their assistant primarily, but make sure that you know the law, what's out there, and what your proposed law is going to fix. Because without that, you will get shot down. Yeah, I'll stop there. You'll get shot down.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is questions here that is posted. How do you find any bill that already addresses your issue? There's a website that you can go to, and then you can basically, depending on which legislative session, there's spots where you put that information in, and it will be able to pull bills that are already passed. I'm not sure if that will actually give you the entire laws. I have not done it before, but I guess that is as much as I know. And the second question is it too late to propose a bill for this legislative session? Yes, it's too late. It's usually in December. That is when you submit the language for any bill that you wanted for that legislative session. So it's in December, that is when people do that. And then the next one is, how can the league help? How can we get the help from the league? Well, if you volunteer for the league, you will have access to the resources of the league. If there is an issue that you wanted to collaborate with the league on it, then they will be able to help you in terms of whatever that issue is that you wanted the league to help you with. And there's a resources here on the chat that you can contact the Maine Law Reference Library, and you will be able to search it there for somebody who wanted to do that work by themselves, do the research. So that information is there. So we got 5 more minutes. If you have questions, please, you can ask it directly or put it on the chat, and I will be able to share it with everybody. Thank you, Matt, for sharing. I know that it was not an easy thing. You did come and share your story, and hopefully people will be able to take something from it and make the best out of it.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome, guys. I hope so. And you guys are very welcome. I'm happy to share. I would just say that any one of you guys can do the same thing that my wife and I did. There's nothing unique about us or no special skill that we have, you know. You guys can do the same thing. It's just quite an experience. That's all I'll say. But thank you for having me. If it's okay, Lotto, I'll sign out. And any of you guys, if you have additional questions, Lotto does have my contact information. So if you want to send me an email, ask a question, I will be more than happy to reply. So I wish you all the best, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
All right, bye, guys.
Well, if there's no more questions, then we can sign off early and give you 5 minutes of your life back. I hope you guys enjoyed the training today.